Konnichiwa, minasan. Hello, everyone. Since I'm learning Japanese, so I had to say that. Taking the Ruby road to front-end testing. Am I too loud? So, before I begin, I just want to quickly know that how many of you here are not developers or QAs? Oh my God, a lot of developers here. Or have worked with tools like Selenium or Capybara? Good. Lot of hands I see. So taking the Ruby road to front-end testing, this talk is closely going to relate to front-end testing, which tools we can use to test the front-end of our applications, what are the common arguments that people usually have when it comes to UI testing. How do we proceed about it? How can we build an approach to test the front-end of a web application? You might have heard of these words from the world of testing: black box, gray box, GUI, backend, frontend, and just the list goes on. So all these kind of testings can be summarized as verifying the expected outcome against the actual outcome, depending upon the application, its components, its scope, and its functionality. This doesn't work. Front-end testing. Front-end testing is about validating the user flow and checking the functionality of the application available to the end user. So what are the things we usually check when it comes to a web application? Whether the links are correctly working on a page, does it redirect to the proper page or not? If there are forms, are they behaving correctly or not? Check for some of the end-to-end scenarios, some negative scenarios, in case if a user has input some negative data, some incorrect data, do we get a correct error message displayed or not? The timer is not working for me. That's what I was wondering. It's still on 25. Anyways, fine. 20 minutes to go. Fine. Yeah. This is not working. Manual versus automation. New improvements, new feature requests, enhancements are just an ongoing process for any application that we see. Suppose today your application is a little small and you think that you may want to stick to manual testing and just you can do away with it. That's okay. But what if your application scales and it increases in size and it may have too many features in edge case scenario where you may be required to click through manually? Now such are the cases where automation comes into picture. Automation is nothing but the use of testing tool to control the execution of tests. It helps you save on regression time. Now, do I really require to write automated tests for the UI? The answer is yes, but you usually find them slow and fragile. Is there anybody who disagrees with this statement? And feels that they are super fast and super awesome? Do you all feel that? The UI tests, you can say that they may be slow and fragile, but because they are slow because they test your application end to end, they hit the browser, they interact with the UI elements in the page, they fetch some data from the backend, and of course, how do we forget the network services which are there, the network latency. So if any of these moving parts is not working correctly, the test is likely to break. The UI test will likely to break. So it is certain that the UI test or the front-end test cannot be faster than a unit test. Can you write loads of unit tests and test the UI of the application? Is it possible? So in order to complete your test automation suite for any web application that you're testing, the front-end tests are essential. Now it depends on you that how do you write your tests, how you optimize them, whichever tool you're using, how efficiently you use that tool, so that your tests actually give you some results. Building an approach. Understand the functionality of the application. It is very important to understand the behavior of the application. What is the functionality? Knowing what are we testing is important. Knowing the scope of the application helps. Also knowing that your audience, what combination of operating system or browsers your audience is using. Considering all these factors, you can prioritize your testing methodology. Write a test plan and test cases. Once you're clear with the understanding of your application, you should go ahead and write your test plan and test cases. Now you need to decide which are the ones that you need to automate. It's not that you will automate all the things. Just because you can automate, no, it shouldn't be that way. Also, do not automate just for the sake of automating. Or the other side, that you're just not writing automated test cases at all and going in a completely vicious circle of doing manual regressions because you do not want to write any code. And you think you're a QA. You shouldn't do that. So now, which are the cases that you could automate are the ones which involves a huge amount of test data, or the ones which need to be tested repeatedly. Inspect the UI elements accordingly. Now that you know that which are the test cases that you want to automate, you can inspect the UI elements accordingly. What do I mean when I say inspecting the UI elements? So we'll quickly take a sample application. I'm sure all of you might have used some sort of paste bin some or the other time. So this is the Fedora paste bin where the basic functionality is to create a paste and share around the link. So there are 3 elements which we are going to interact with. This is the text box where I input some text. I click on the paste button and then I'll see that my paste gets created. So when I go here, I do a right click, I see inspect element, and I see that this is a text area which is an ID, paste data. So now we know that we need to capture the text area with that ID. This button again, this also has an ID. Now coming here, now I need to verify that the text which I entered should be the same as displayed here. Now I see that I don't see any considerable element which I can capture and interact with it in my script. There's no such class or any attribute which I can use. So what I do is, I go to the parent element and I see that there's a div which has a class text. So that is how you need to inspect the UI elements, and you need to know that which are the ones you need to interact with. Which are the ones that the WebDriver can interact with properly. So the safest elements that you could interact with are ID because it's unique on a page. Then you can go ahead and use the class name for any particular element on the page. Next, it's not advised that you use text as the element locator to interact with the element on the page, because if later some label text changes, then your test will break. You'll have to maintain your test cases that way. Select the automation library to interact with the browser. You need to select which automation library you want to use while you're interacting with the browser. Depending upon your choice, you could use Selenium, WATIR, or we'll just see later. Last, you can start writing your test script. Test automation tools. Selenium is the most widely used tool for automation. It's an open source tool you can use to interact with the elements in the web page. It automates the browsers by loading them and performing some user actions on them. So one of the advantages that Selenium has to get started is that it provides you with a Selenium IDE with which you can record and play your tests. But it is not advised to use the Selenium IDE because it has a couple of limitations. It does not allow you to loop through the elements, which is really required to write efficient test scripts for the front end. So now, if you're using the recorder, suppose you've recorded like 100 test scripts, but what if a label text changes? What are you going to do? Is it that you're going to record your 100 tests again? No. So you should always use the Selenium Ruby bindings, or you should write your script by your own. WATIR WebDriver. WATIR stands for Web Application Testing in Ruby. It is another Ruby gem. It has a very readable and a friendly API. It is implemented as a wrapper over the Selenium 2.0 API. I personally like WATIR WebDriver because with this, I don't have to worry about element locators like XPath or CSS. I can simply interact with the element, the name of the element like text area, followed by a key parenthesis, key value pair, wherein I can specify that whether it is an ID or a class with what is the value of that attribute. Capybara is another tool which you can use. It has its own DSL. It provides you with a high-level API wherein where you can use methods like fill in, click button. These are the kind of methods. So what's the difference here is that we are depending on the API to find the most suitable element locator for us on the web page. So I prefer WATIR WebDriver over Capybara. Rest is your choice. Now considering the sample application, let's see the sample application that we just saw. We'll quickly go through the code. We require the Ruby gems. The first line simulates a real user opening a browser. Next, we navigate to the URL of the application. We find the interact with the text area. We input some text in that text area using the send keys method. We perform a click operation on that button. The button had an ID. Now there has to be a network latency where we wait for the element to appear on the page so that our test does not break. But we are not adding any sleep time here. So the implicit timeout for the wait until present method is 30 seconds. So if the element does not appear within 30 seconds, your test is going to fail, which eventually, if you're adding sleep, you will tend to add, do not give a good user experience to your customers if you're adding more sleep, just to let the elements appear on the page. Next is we verify that whatever text we have entered is same as the output that we get. And lastly, we close the browser. So if we see how this works is, this is going to just open a browser. So this was just a simple script that we had written, very small. So this will open the browser, perform certain operations, and verify, and just probably the network. Anyways, we blame it on the network for not working and taking too long to load. Never mind. Choosing a testing framework. So now you've chosen a web driver with which you want to interact with the elements in a web page. How you're going to proceed, what actions you want to perform, the test cases that you want. Now, a testing framework is mainly to control the execution of tests, to provide certain initialization methods, some teardown methods, and to organize your code well, to have a test runner, to generate reports. Which all testing frameworks that you can use, depending upon your choice, you could use test unit, which is the unit testing framework, Minitest, RSpec, or Cucumber, depending upon your choice, whichever you like. If you're a fan of Aaron, you could probably use Minitest and not RSpec. He prefers Minitest over RSpec. Cucumber. How many of you have used Cucumber here before? Good number of hands. Still, a lot of people haven't used it. Cucumber is a tool for behavior-driven development. Behavior-driven development is an extension from TDD. So test-driven development says you write your test first and the application code later. What about describing the behavior of the application in plain words instead of writing your test first and then the application code? So behavior-driven testing is a companion of behavior-driven development. Cucumber supports that. It allows you to write your test cases in plain text so that how you want to use it. A lot of people have an argument saying that why should we use Cucumber when we can understand the code? It's not meant for us. A lot of people say that it is meant for, we write all the features, the unit, the story, the user stories, scenarios, and everything, but the stakeholders never read it. So if that is the case, and still you're using Cucumber, if a tool is not working for you, probably you shouldn't use it. So the use case which I find about Cucumber, which is good, is that I do not have to I don't have to write my test cases in a separate test case management tool and manually do a pass or fail. I can simply use Cucumber and write down all my test cases there itself with the step definitions, which is descriptive enough for anybody else to read it and understand whether the test passed. If at all I want to keep some of the manual tests, I can tag them depending upon my choice. So the syntax that Cucumber uses is the Jenkins syntax, which is of given, when, then, where you can actually specify all the steps which are there for your test case. Jenkins is a continuous integration tool. I don't need to define much into it. And you can use it for integrating your tests, schedule your builds as per your requirement. With Cucumber, there are a couple of good plugins which are available, which allow you to integrate reports, some fancy reports of Cucumber which can be displayed. Demo, since the net is not working, I'm not sure. So after we integrate our tests to Jenkins, this is how the reports look like. Something little fancy. Where we have the number of scenarios, this number of steps that passed, what was the test case, what was the feature that I was testing for that application, to be able to test to paste a snippet of text on fpaste successfully. I follow this format of feature wherein I write scenarios and followed by the format of given, when, then. So there are different styles where you can how you can write your steps and the features, imperative and declarative, depending upon how you want to write. So this is where I specify each step, that given that I'm on the home page, when I input text and I click on paste button. The other way of writing this could be when a user inputs some text, so the paste should be created, then the paste should be created successfully, where you do not mention all the steps and write it in a generic way and perform all your tests inside that. So the code that we just saw for the WATIR WebDriver, just those small line of code can be placed well in place with respect to each step, where we are performing what operation under each step, so that your code also looks cleaner and you know where is which test. So I'll show you one of the tests which failed, which was, so how you optimize your tests. So this is a test case which failed, but I don't know how did it fail. Now, this is how you optimize your test, and it depends on you how you're writing a script. Now here I can see the error which tells me, please keep an interval of 5 seconds between your pace, which means that I might have run the build twice successfully. So here I also get a screenshot that why my test case failed. It depends how you write your. Points to remember. You should keep your code dry. Do not repeat yourself. Are you putting your code to sleep? Do not put your code to sleep. Do not add any additional waits. Always try and use the wait until present methods, so that anything which is waiting for the element for more than 30 seconds to appear on the page is not going to give a good user experience. Choose your element locators carefully, what we discussed, which should be unique on the page. Avoid using text as your element locators. Organize your code well. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions?
Nobody? All right. No, I'm sure if you have any more questions, you can ask her during the lunch break we have now. We're going to have a 45 minutes lunch break. Okay, please give a round of applause for her. We're going to have a 45 minutes lunch break now, and I'll just see you after 45 minutes.